Do you believe in the existence of the perfect crime in this world? If you have watched over 1,000 movies, you will realize that in this world, there is no such thing as anything truly bizarre. A prisoner pretended to assist a corpse transporter in the past and now requests the transporter's help to escape from prison. Back in his cell, he carved words into the wall, making sure the guards weren't nearby. Then, he opened the squat toilet and escaped through the sewer, running to the spot he had prearranged with the corpse transporter. Just like that, he was transported out as a corpse. All he had to do was wait for the transporter to free him from the coffin. But when the prisoner lit a match, a terrifying scene unfolded before his eyes, making him scream in horror. It turns out this was a story told by Lee Wei-ji in a restaurant. However, the blonde-haired person in the restaurant preferred watching movies. As they were chatting, a police officer named Sang-kun at the door shouted for them to keep quiet. Just as Lee Wei-ji was bragging to the restaurant owner about his ability to solve cases, Sang-kun walked over. Sang-kun greeted the owner and, as usual, left without paying. That day, Police Chief Law Wen was interrogating a suspect. The suspect explained that after the victim won the lottery, he treated everyone to drinks that night. Since the victim had too much to drink, the suspect took him home. Afterward, he invited a few friends over to his place to play mahjong. The next morning, he discovered the victim had already died in bed, and then he reported it to the police. After hearing the story, Police Chief Law Wen gave her deduction. The key to this case wasn't about the timing, but rather the space where the crime was committed. The suspect wrapped a rope around the neck of the drunken victim, then threw the rope out the window. He waited for the right moment to pull the rope from downstairs, which ultimately strangled the victim. When Law Wen presented the rope used in the crime, the suspect was left with no way to refute the evidence. She told her subordinates, "When you've studied 1,000 cases, you'll realize that no case is truly bizarre." Lee Wei-ji is part of a family of 4, consisting of his wife and 2 daughters. He was feeding their younger daughter, Anen, while his wife, Yu, brought another dish to the table. At that moment, his eldest daughter, Ping Ping, also came home from school. Ping Ping had entered her rebellious phase and often talked back to Lee Wei-ji. Though he appeared to be a strict father, deep down, Lee Wei-ji still loved his daughter very much. Ping Ping said that the school is organizing a summer camp and only outstanding students can participate. She is one of them, which made her father very happy. The 3-day camp costs 6,000 baht. Father hesitate if signed the consent form. This made daughter a bit upset. However, later that evening, he still signed the consent form for his daughter. The summer camp experience made Ping Ping very happy. Meanwhile, a male classmate had been secretly taking pictures of her throughout the camp. The boy was Su-che, the son of police chief. That evening, Su-che tricked Ping Ping into drinking a juice. On the other side, Lee Wei-ji was watching a movie in the store. He was so moved by the film that he couldn't help but cry. The blonde-haired person was his staff member, primarily responsible for collecting broadband fees from customers. Lee Wei-ji often encounters neighbors and customers from less fortunate families, and he sometimes doesn't even charge them for their internet fees. Uncle Song introduced him to a business opportunity to install network lines for the new police station. At this time, Sang-kun was also having a discussion with an elderly man in the restaurant. It turned out that the police chief's son nearly blinded the elderly man's son, and Sang-kun came to persuade the old man to settle the matter privately. Lee Wei-ji advised the old man to first obtain a medical assessment of the injuries before filing a lawsuit for compensation. When Sang-kun returned, the old man hurriedly left. Sang-kun suspected that Lee Wei-ji was interfering, so he issued a warning to him. In this way, he offended Sang-kun. That day, Su-che got into fight and injured hand. His mother, Law Wen, applied medicine to his wound, eyes full of concern, showing how much she doted on him. However, his father slapped him across the face because Su-che had injured someone's eye, which could jeopardize his own mayoral campaign. During dinner, Ping Ping's parents noticed that something was off with their daughter, but they had no idea what had happened. As Ping Ping stepped outside, she ran into Su-che. He took out the inappropriate video he had filmed of Ping Ping that day and threatened her, saying she had to wait for him at home at 10 p.m. Lee Wei-ji told his wife that he needed to go on a business trip for a day. Then he arrived at a hotel in Luotong to repair the computer surveillance system. Mother was certain that something had happened to daughter. In Luotong, Li Weiji first went to an ATM to withdraw money, then bought tickets for a boxing match. At the boxing match, he was very excited. Meanwhile, at his home, Ping Ping was waiting for Su Cha at the warehouse door. After they entered the warehouse, Ping Ping's mother turned on the lights. You warned Su Cha that if he dared to bully her daughter again, she would fight him to the end. Arrogant Su Cha actually pulled out the secretly filmed video and showed it to Ayu.
Seeing her daughter being humiliated, Ayu immediately tried to grab the phone from Su Cha's hands.
At that moment, Ping Ping grabbed a hoe and struck Su Cha on the head, smashing both him and the phone on the ground. Mother realized that Su Cha was no longer breathing. At that moment, Li Weiji called home, and just as younger daughter came downstairs looking for mother and was about to answer the phone, Li Weiji hung up. When he tried calling again, the line was busy because phone hadn't been properly hung up. Meanwhile, the mother put Su Cha's body into a burlap sack and used a handcart to wheel him out of the warehouse. The little daughter upstairs witnessed the whole scene. The mother made her way to the cemetery at the back, where there was a fellow villager's grave. She intended to bury Su Cha there as well. The little daughter witnessed this scene as well. Li Weiji had a feeling that something was wrong at home, so he returned immediately that night. After learning everything, he refused his wife's suggestion to report it to the police. He said that if they reported it, they wouldn't even have a chance to go to prison because the person who died was the police chief's son. He stood in front of the villager's grave, his mind replaying scenes from the detective movies he had watched. Thus, an audacious plan to deceive everyone began to form in his mind. The next day, he took Su Cha's car keys and phone, carefully inspected the scene, and instructed his wife and daughters not to leave the house and to lock all doors and windows securely. Ping Ping expressed that she never intended to kill anyone. Li Weiji comforted his daughter, assuring her that as long as he was there, no one would go to jail. Police officer Sang Kun was having breakfast. Li Weiji, unfamiliar with the car's controls, accidentally set off the alarm, and coincidentally, Sang Kun saw him from afar. As he drove, he thought about how to deal with the car, drawing inspiration from the detective movies he had watched. He avoided checkpoints and evaded roadside surveillance cameras, eventually arriving at a gravel yard. He turned on the phone, deleted the video, wiped off fingerprints, and then tossed it onto a sand transporting vehicle. Next, he drove the car to the lakeside and pushed it into the water. At that moment, a shepherd happened to pass by. Fortunately, Li Weiji managed to avoid being noticed. After returning home, Li Weiji decided to take the whole family out for a trip. On bus, he told the ticket collector they were heading to watch a boxing match. At hotel checkout, deliberately argued with receptionist, and later, he took his daughters out for cake. After that, the whole family went to watch a movie together. After watching the movie, the whole family went to see the boxing match. During the boxing match, Li Weiji deliberately knocked over someone else's popcorn to create a scene. After returning home, he reminded his wife to keep the receipts when shopping and suggested they reorganize their recent accounts. To get through this, he had many things to take care of. On the other side, Police Chief Lo Wen couldn't reach his son and began to feel worried. He instructed his subordinates to check the location history of Su Cha's phone. After some time, Li Weiji went to the new police station construction site to check on things. Sang Kun delivered a swift kick that knocked his business partner to the ground. In a moment of desperation, Li Weiji kicked Sang Kun back. Furious, Sang Kun pulled out his handgun and shot a sheep that was nearby. Lo Wen finally managed to retrieve his son's car from the lake. Upon discovering son wasn't in the car, she temporarily breathed a sigh of relief. During police investigation, seeing photo of the car, Sang Kun told Superior that he vaguely remembered seeing Li Weiji driving that car. Superior assumed he was using situation as excuse for revenge. Li Weiji had already conducted a mock interrogation at home, preparing his family for potential questioning by the authorities. As the police investigation progressed, they eventually went to the school to question Ping Ping. Her father had already instructed her not to deny knowing Su Cha, but to simply say that she only remembered him. During her father's training, he advised her that the police would use leading questions to try to catch her off guard, so she should just say that she had only seen Su Cha once at the summer camp. Because mock interrogation at home, Ping Ping handled questioning from police very well, without any loopholes. When the police came to the house, Yu clearly appeared a bit flustered. Fortunately, Li Weiji had returned home. During questioning, she inadvertently let slip their family was not home on the 2nd and 3rd, had gone to Luotong and returned on the evening of the 3rd. However, the police did not specifically ask about the timeline. Sang-kun questioned and attacked Lee Wei-ji by exploiting the inconsistencies in Yu's statements. After brief silence, Lee Wei-ji explained, "Wife is a bit hot-tempered. You've questioned Ping Ping already, she doesn't know what happened. Told us all questions you asked over phone." When questioned about Sang-kun having seen him driving the yellow car, he denied it, claiming Sang-kun was seeking revenge. Sang-kun deliberately raised voice, saying, "Found important clue in car." Lee Wei-ji displayed a natural expression. Opposite him, Lo Wen noticed the change in his expression. Soon, police arrived at Lee Wei-ji's house to conduct search and brought the whole family to station for interrogation. In fact, Lee Wei-ji had already conducted a mock interrogation with his entire family, meticulously preparing them. He had gone over every possible question the police might ask and trained them on how to give the most reasonable responses. Even responses of younger daughter were flawless, leaving no room for error. At this point, the neighbors had gathered at the entrance of the police station. Under pressure, Lo Wen decided to release them. To establish timeline of their alleged crime, police questioned several witnesses: restaurant owner, blonde-haired person, bus ticket seller, bakery owner, boxing gym owner, and popcorn vendor. All the witnesses corroborated the family's story, leaving no gaps or inconsistencies. However, Lo Wen still believed they were highly suspicious, yet she could never pinpoint the exact issue. When Lo Wen wanted to know more about Lee Wei-ji's characteristics, Sang-kun remarked that he loved watching movies, even mentioned famous saying of Lee Wei-ji's, "After watching 1,000 movies, nothing seems strange anymore." The police began reviewing Lee Wei-ji's movie-watching history, and during the report, they mentioned the film montage. After hearing this, Lo Wen roughly understood how Lee Wei-ji had managed to create the perfect alibi. Lee Wei-ji and his family didn't lie, they truly had gone to Luotong, and the witnesses didn't lie either. However, Lee Wei-ji manipulated the timeline, using events from both the 2nd and the 3rd as material. He employed subtle tricks to reinforce people's impressions. Through deliberate guidance, Lee Wei-ji led the witnesses to believe that certain events had occurred on the 2nd, when in fact they had only happened on the 3rd. In this way, the witnesses indirectly provided false testimony on behalf of Lee Wei-ji. This technique of mixing and rearranging events, much like in film editing, is called montage. Although Lo Wen had figured out everything Lee Wei-ji had done, she was still powerless against the flawless chain of evidence he had constructed. At that moment, Sucha's classmate arrived at the police station and produced a video of Sucha raping Ping Ping. Lo Wen instantly understood everything. Her husband was still campaigning for mayor, and this video could not be made public under any circumstances. Lee Wei-ji's family was subjected to questioning again. Lo Wen directly showed the video to Ping Ping. At that moment, her mother stepped forward and stood in front of her daughter, reprimanding Lo Wen, "Your son is nothing but a beast." This was a confrontation between two mothers. Lo Wen, furious and desperate to find out her son's whereabouts, ordered Sang-kun to use any means necessary to extract the truth. After receiving the order, Sang-kun understood the police chief's intentions. He kicked Lee Wei-ji, while the other police officers also began to attack Lee Wei's family, and pleaded for them not to hurt her father, but Lo Wen took her into the office, under intimidation, and revealed what she had witnessed. Soon, heavy rain began to pour from the sky, and everyone gathered at the burial ground behind Lee Wei-ji's house. The townspeople were furious about everything the police had done, and some journalists had also arrived at the scene. This was also the burial ground for many of the townspeople's loved ones. After conducting the search, the police identified a suspicious grave and began digging. They unearthed a burlap sack from the site. As the burlap sack was pulled out, the crowd's faces displayed a range of emotions, while Lee Wei-ji remained calm. When the burlap sack was opened, Lee Wei-ji's wife was shocked to see that inside was the goat that Sang-kun had shot and killed. The residents, long dissatisfied with the police, were furious. They clashed with the officers, overturning police cars in the chaos. Lee Wei-ji gazed at the scratch marks on the coffin lid, lost in deep thought. As the incident was reported, the residents' long-held grievances against the police erupted. In the end, Lo Wen was dismissed from her position. and her husband withdrew from the mayoral race. After the events had passed, Li Weiji encountered Luo Wen and her husband at a temple. Luo Wen pleaded with Li Weiji to reveal her son's whereabouts. He responded, "When he hurt my daughter, I had no chance to stop it, but I had to prevent my family from being harmed by him again." In the end, he simply expressed his apologies to Luo Wen and her husband. However, one day, Li Weiji suddenly appeared on television. He had gone to the police station to turn himself in because he noticed that his youngest daughter, An, was showing troubling changes, including lying. He wanted to set a proper example for his family. As a husband and father, all he could do for his family was to stand in front of them, no matter what happened. The clever audience will deduce where Sucha's body was buried, and I trust you will figure out the answer. The story of the film comes to an end here. Thank you for watching.